Imagine you're trapped. Your ship, a tiny speck of wood and iron, is crushed by the immense pressure of polar ice. The temperature plummets to 50 degrees below zero. You're in Antarctica, the most hostile place on Earth, with 27 crewmates, and civilization is thousands of kilometers away. This isn't a movie plot. This is the true story of Sir Ernest Shackleton and his crew, a tale of survival so incredible it almost defies belief. On the 4th of November 1914, their ship, fittingly named the Endurance, became hopelessly trapped in the frozen Weddell Sea. Shackleton's dream of being the first to cross the Antarctic continent on foot was over. The new mission was brutally simple: keep every single man alive for months. The ship was their prison, drifting helplessly with the ice pack. They could hear the timbers groaning, the ice groaning back. A terrifying duet in the endless polar night. Then, the inevitable happened. The ice, a relentless, unstoppable force, began to squeeze the Endurance, lifting it, twisting it, and finally, splintering it into a wreck. Shackleton gave the order to abandon ship. All they had were 3 small lifeboats, the supplies they could salvage, and the clothes on their backs. They set up a makeshift camp on a massive, unstable ice floe, which they grimly named Patience Camp. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. They hunted seals and penguins to survive, their meager rations dwindling. The ice beneath them was constantly shifting, cracking, and threatening to swallow them whole. Their world was a desolate, white landscape, stretching to an unforgiving horizon. Morale was the greatest enemy after the cold. Shackleton knew this. He was a master of leadership. He organized routines, games, and even theatrical performances to keep his men's spirits from freezing along with their bodies. He ensured every man felt valued, that no dissent could fester. His leadership was the invisible thread holding them all together. After 5 long months on the ice, the floe they were on finally began to break up. It was time to take to the open, treacherous sea in their 3 small, open lifeboats. They set a course for Elephant Island, a desolate, uninhabited rock over 100 miles away. The journey was a nightmare. They were soaked by freezing waves, battered by storms, and suffered from relentless thirst as their fresh water ran low. They had to navigate through a maze of icebergs, any one of which could have capsized their tiny vessels. After a week of pure hell, they finally spotted the dark, jagged cliffs of Elephant Island. They were the first humans to ever set foot there. But it wasn't a rescue. It was just a slightly more solid prison than the ice floe. Elephant Island was a brutal, windswept rock, offering little shelter. They overturned 2 of the boats to create a crude hut, but they knew no one would ever find them there. It was a dead end. Rescue wasn't coming to them. They had to go to it. Shackleton made a decision that sounds like madness. He would take the strongest of the 3 lifeboats, the James Caird, and attempt an impossible journey across the most dangerous stretch of ocean on the planet, the Southern Ocean. He selected 5 of his best men to go with him. Their destination? The whaling station on South Georgia Island, almost 1,300 kilometers away. The remaining 22 men would be left behind on Elephant Island under the command of his second, Frank Wild, with the slimmest hope of ever seeing Shackleton again. The voyage of the James Caird is one of the greatest feats of navigation and seamanship in history. For 16 days, the 6 men were tossed about in their 22-foot boat by hurricane-force winds and colossal waves. Some they called greybeards that were over 18 meters high. They were constantly bailing water, their clothes frozen solid. Their navigator, Frank Worsley, somehow managed to take sightings of the sun with his sextant, his hands raw from the cold, guiding them through the storm-wracked sea. They were on the very edge of human endurance, suffering from frostbite, thirst, and sheer exhaustion. Miraculously, against all odds, they spotted the coast of South Georgia, but their ordeal wasn't over. The storm had blown them to the wrong side of the island. The whaling stations were on the other side, separated from them by a jagged, unexplored mountain range and glaciers no one had ever attempted to cross. Rest was not an option. Waiting for the sea to calm could take weeks, and the men back on Elephant Island were running out of time. So Shackleton, along with 2 of his companions, Worsley and Crean, set off on a final, desperate gamble. With nothing but a rope, a carpenter's adze for an ice axe, and screws from the boat hammered into their boots for crampons, they began the climb. For 36 continuous hours, they trekked across the treacherous, unmapped interior of South Georgia, navigating crevices and frozen cliffs. Finally, exhausted and looking like wild men, they stumbled down into the Stromness whaling station. The whalers who saw them were stunned into silence. Seeing men they thought were ghosts, the first thing Shackleton did was not rest or eat a proper meal. He immediately began organizing a rescue for the 3 men left on the other side of the island, and more importantly, for the 22 men he had left on Elephant Island months ago. His first 3 attempts to get back to them were thwarted by impenetrable pack ice. The Antarctic winter was closing in, but Shackleton refused to give up. On his 4th attempt, aboard a borrowed Chilean tugboat, he finally broke through. As they approached Elephant Island, he scanned the shore with his binoculars. He counted the figures. 1, 2, 3, all 22. Not a single man had been lost. This story is not one of conquest or discovery in the traditional sense. They never crossed the continent, but it's a story of a far greater triumph, a triumph of the human spirit. Shackleton promised his men he would get them home, and he fulfilled that promise against impossible odds. His leadership, his unwavering optimism, and his absolute dedication to his crew turned a catastrophic failure into one of history's most inspiring survival sagas. It reminds us that in the darkest of times, courage, teamwork, and an unbreakable will to live can achieve the impossible. Thank you so much for watching. If you were inspired by this incredible story of human endurance, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of history's most remarkable adventures.